Why don't you, I thought it was a pretty good question. Somebody asked you earlier about racing Earnhardt Sr. here or anywhere. Kind of, how was it you were supposed to handle him?
That's a good question. You know, Dale's name comes up almost every day, and people ask me, why is that? And I said, because he was probably our sport's very best, the most aggressive driver, on. And him and I had many, many years of racing each other. And I had a guy by the name of Dave Marcus tell me how to race Earnhardt back in the day. I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia, doing testing for Penske, and my very first opportunity to drive an IROC car. So Dave Marcus was the main IROC test driver, and I got to race a little bit in the IROC cars. And when Earnhardt and I started racing together, he kept bumping into me all the time, like knocking me sideways, roughing me up. And finally, we were at one of the IROC test sessions, and Marcus come up to me and said, look, he said, I had that guy rough me up quite a bit. And a long time ago, I said, I've had it. And every time he touched me, I'd hit him back harder. And I'd beat on him so much that every time he'd go to lap me, if he touched me one time, I'd spin him out, put him in the wall, I'd do something, because I wasn't going to tolerate that. He said, you need to do that to him. You're going to earn some respect, and he'll quit messing with you. So that's what I started doing. Every time he'd run into me, I'd run into him harder. And he'd run into me again, I'd spin him out. And then all controversy broke loose. And it got to where every time we get close together, he would never touch me, ever. And so we'd run side by side. And I'd watch him. I'd pass him, he'd pass me, and I'd watch him go down in the corner, and he'd hit some poor old dude and put him right in the wall. But he'd get around me, he would never mess with me. It's because what Marcus taught me how to do that. But one of the most exciting races I had with him, one of the most controversial, was right here the night that him and I were racing side by side, and we're early in the race, and I come off of turn 2, and I get a little loose. He gets me in the quarter panel, spins me out, and I wipe the car all out. And it took us like 40 laps to get it repaired and back on the track. So I had to limp around that track all damn night, you know, just going for points. And I was so frustrated. And when the race was over, my kid came up to me, and he said, Dad, I can't believe that happened. I said, well, that's racing, but I was mad. And so he just gave me one of these water bottles just like this, because I was hot and sweaty. It was a night race. It's really warm out there. So I went down to talk to him, and he just got involved with Terry Labonte at the start-finish line here, where they went crazy wrecking at the end of the race. So I couldn't get his attention. So, and I kept hollering at him, hey Dale, because I was mad. And so I had that water bottle, and I was just going to throw that water bottle at his chest to get his attention. And I told him, I said, I screwed up and I missed, and I hit him in the head instead. I threw that thing and hit him right in the forehead. And boy, all hell broke loose then. Then we went crazy. And we had a hell of a time. And that was like 2 races after him and I had the big wreck at Talladega when I went over like 23 times and all that stuff. And so we were having words about that down there. We're screaming and hollering, but you know, it seems like once a week somebody brings that up. I was telling Jerry, I was on the phone yesterday with a reporter from Road Track Magazine. He wanted to talk about my experience at the X Games driving Robbie Gordon's truck. So he was talking about that. And he said, which one of your most exciting tracks? And I said, Bristol. He said, oh yeah, I'll never forget that night with that water bottle thing. And here's this guy out in LA, you know, talking about a Robbie Gordon truck, and he brings up the deal in Bristol with a water bottle. But it always happens. But that was an exciting night, and I'll never forget it. And things like that have always happened to this track. I'll never forget him and I racing here. We raced so hard that we just couldn't even we weren't coherent at the end of the race. And he won, and I finished second. And we came in here, and you guys might remember that night they pushed him up victory lane. When they pushed him up, he couldn't lift his hand to turn the motor off. He was so dead, he was just passed out in the seat sitting in victory lane, and the guys had to go over there and shut the engine off for him. Well, at the bottom of the ramp, they impounded my car. I'm sitting down there. I got out of my car and slid to the bottom, was passed out, dripping wet at the end, and he's passed out in his car in victory lane. And that's how hard this place can wear you out, but those are some of the greatest races. We're also talking about the bump and run on a radio show yesterday. I was down in MRN Studios doing a deal, and we were talking about it. And they said, where did the bump and run get created? I said, got created in turn 3 at Bristol. I went down there leading that race, and Jeff Gordon got to me, hit me in the back, bumped me in the back, and run me up the track and went on to win. And that was the terminology. That night's where the bump and run. I'm going to bump you, then I'm going to take a run on you. And so every time I come back as a television broadcaster, we'd say, okay, get ready for that bump and run. And that's where it happened that one night. But Jeff Gordon started it. I was a recipient of it. So he can claim fame that he created the term.